Hello, everyone, and happy Sunday to you. Maybe not as happy a Sunday as we were hoping for. I think last week Louis left the show saying that we were cautiously optimistic and that we hoped that we could discuss good things. But lo and behold, the Republicans, as they do, have found a way to disappoint us. They found several ways this go around. So,
Several ways, yeah. So I want to address the elephant in the room. This is why I said last week, if I were a gambling man, because I'm not a gambling man. I'm a good steward of the Lord's money. And had I put his money where I thought it was going to go, I would have been wrong. I remember last week I said that I'd put every dollar I had on the fact that we'd pick up 25 seats in the House. Well, that
yeah.
didn't happen.
No.
And I said
No,
that
it
we
really
would.
didn't.
I gave a 65% chance of retaking the Senate. Well, that didn't happen.
That wasn't, yeah,
So glad I'm
yeah.
not a gambling man. That's for sure.
I was, I think everybody was really hopeful,
Yeah,
and we're gonna. This is nothing more than a postmortem. That this is
yeah.
definitely
That's what
like
this whole
that's
show is. It's a post mortem from the elections. Yeah.
like what the heck happened? Where did things go wrong? And who is at fault? Because and we always want to, we grow up in the South. You want to be good sportsmen, and we
Hmm.
don't want to throw around blame for who screwed up. But I live in the business world, and blame is important because if you have a problem somewhere, chances are it's going to happen again. And I will remind everyone here at the start: this is the second time in a row. This is the second red
That's right.
splash, red dribble, red trickle, whatever you want to call it. This is the second one in a row. The
Yeah.
2020 election was supposed, the presidency was kind of a toss up, but
Yeah. But everything else was supposed to
down
be
ballot
the
was
down ballot
supposed to,
races weren't even supposed to be close.
and we did better than we thought. We did okay.
Hmm.
It was favorable
Picked
to
up what,
us, but
10 House seats in 2020?
it wasn't nearly as good as it should have been as what people were initially predicting. And here we are again, the same story. Republicans have victory, and they grasp defeat from the jaws of it.
Hmm.
So what is wrong with this party that they just can't get their act together? We're going to talk about it. So
Yeah, so let's start with our first point. What has happened up to this point? What is still happening up to this point?
right
Which we'll get to
beyond
that with when it comes to problems.
Right. Beyond all the analysis, what are the facts on the ground? What is the status of all of the races? What are numbers are we working with going into the new year? What is
Fact
going
number
on?
one, yesterday they called the Nevada race for the Democratic candidate. And now the Senate will be controlled by the Democratic Party. All hope is lost for the Republicans to retake the Senate this election season.
Yes. So we have it pulled up here. Currently, the official election tally is 48-48, Democrat to Republican. Two of those senators were not up for reelection, and those are independents, and they always go with Democrats for voting. So
Mhm.
that's essentially a 50-48 split between Democrats and Republicans. Alaska is likely going to break for Republicans, which will bring it to 50-49. And then, regardless of the runoff election in Georgia, whether it goes Republican or Democrat, Democrats are either going to have 50 plus Kamala Harris, or they're going to have 51.
51, yeah. Which I still think that Herschel Walker and Raphael Warnock race is still very important because now all you need is Kirsten Sinema or Joe Manchin to get squishy, and there goes the filibuster. We still need we still need Herschel Walker to win that race in Georgia. That's still very important to the Republic.
Yes, obviously, we want the Georgia Senate race to come out in our favor, but this is a much more depressing turnout than we were hoping for.
Yeah, but
Um,
when you're talking the Senate race, we've known since July this wasn't a good map. and that's we weren't set up for disappointment as much. I think one of the things is um, uh, Republicans are starting to get high on their own supply concerning polling, and they're starting to believe the polling hype. Y'all, polling in the past couple decades has not gone well for Republicans. The pollsters don't know how to poll Republicans, and so it's like whenever the polls come out for Democrats, they're like, "Oh, they don't know how to poll for Republicans," and then when the polls come out for Republicans, they're like, "See, we're winning." It's like, no, you can't have your cake and eat it too. It's either one or the other. It's not one and both. So I think we got a little high on our own supply when it came to polling.
Right. But we need to.
But this,
Right, and I think we should go ahead. We have some standouts listed here. Let's talk about them as we talk about the types of races. So let's talk about the Senate standouts.
Okay.
And we can start. We've already sort of mentioned it for Nevada. We can talk about that. It looked very much early on in the percentages that Nevada was going to go to Laxalt. Laxalt was the Trump endorsed candidate. And the number's close, 48.1 to 48.8. I'm not
a little over 6,000 votes. A little over 6,000 votes. That is close.
Yes, and the way the breakout was coming, it did not look like those Lake counties were going to break. It should have broken for Democrat as hard as they did.
Gosh, I'm so sick of this. This happened 2020. We went to bed and Republicans were in a lead by a long shot, and then we woke up and Democrats had won everything somehow. And when it came to Nevada, it was Tuesday, Republicans lead. Wednesday, Republicans lead. Thursday, Republicans lead. Friday, Republicans lead. Saturday, Democrats won.
And I'm going to hold on to this, not talk about it just yet, but it feels gross. It feels
gross.
Not clean. We'll talk about this in the who to blame section, but there's some work that needs to be done there as far as certifying our elections.
Yes. Transparency.
This does not instill trust in your institutions that this has happened twice in a row, and I think that's reasonable because this does not feel clean. People were ready to call that for Laxalt and just switched around at the last minute. Seems like that's been happening a lot lately. But that is the state of Nevada. Whether, and I don't know if I don't think there's any anything in the works for reviewing that. It's obviously it's a solid blue here, so I don't know if they've conceded and they're going to look not going to look into it any further. But that is the sorry state of Nevada. We've also already talked about Georgia. Stephen mentioned the importance of what's going on there. We currently are for Warnock is 49.4, and Herschel Walker is at 48.5.
Yeah, 35,000 vote difference. And the Libertarian candidate picked up a couple. Yeah, it triggered a runoff. Libertarian candidate picked up a couple points, 2 percentages there. And the question isn't whether the Libertarians would vote for a conservative, because I think they would. It's whether they'll show up to vote in a runoff. And I don't think they will. I think that the voter that votes Libertarian on the ballot is not going to show up for a runoff.
Yeah. So
that's just my humble opinion of what's going on there. And I want to say this for Georgia. Good on them for not letting their Senate candidate win with less than 50% of the vote. I mean, good on them. I mean, whenever you're looking at Nevada, Catherine Cortez Masto, 48.8% won the vote. Mark Kelly in Arizona, he does have more than 50%. I'm sorry. But, whenever it's less than 50%, you now have somebody who did not have a majority of their state vote for them to be a federally elected official representing their state in a federal branch of government. That just doesn't feel right. It feels like they should have more than 50% in order to represent an entire state. That's just me.
Yeah. I would I can see that line of thinking.
Yeah. All right,
We're
so
sort of getting
let's
down
go a
into the
little.
minutia of what I believe about elections, so I'd have to ponder that.
Yeah, let's get on up to Pennsylvania and talk about that one.
Oh gosh. Okay. So this was certainly the one you heard about the most on your television. Guys, the Democrats have adopted a new model for their candidates, and it is mentally ill or mentally incompetent
Or mentally incapable.
men.
And
Okay, if you
Fetterman cannot put together a
right,
complete sentence.
right. If you are not aware, maybe you haven't paid attention, maybe you weren't paying attention earlier on, but at the very early in this race, John Fetterman suffered a stroke, and his
Which,
mental,
that's terrible.
yeah,
That's terrible. The man suffered a stroke. He was trying to run for elected office. That is a bad thing to have to go through.
his
But
mental
the Democrats
capacity.
saw that and they said, yeah, his mental capacity is diminished. He cannot understand. He could not understand this conversation you and I are having. He is unable to process auditory
And I
signals,
say
and
this was
so he
early
has
on in
to
the
have
race,
closed
but it was,
captioning device.
yeah, I say this was early in the race, but it was after the primary.
It was after the primary. Yeah.
So he has been dodging debates. The few that he has done, or the few interviews that he has done, have been disturbing. Um,
Yes.
and this man is now elected to the U.S. Senate. I think here, and we will get further into detail about this. I think here we see not so much the worry about Democrat tampering. This one comes down to Republican incompetence.
Yeah, and that's not even a close race. That's 5 points. It's not
Yeah,
even close.
this one was really, um, this one could have been won had some different decisions been made. And yeah, I've got a lot to say about that one. But that
Yeah,
is
and
the
we'll get into
current
that.
state of the Pennsylvania one. And finally, Arizona. So we're going to talk about the Arizona governor race and the Senate race. Blake Masters is a very charismatic candidate.
Mhm.
He was doing well for the simple fact that he seemed to be one of a very few that had a resounding message for the party.
Yeah.
This is like, our country is in the toilet. Let's fix it. Um,
Yeah.
and I think this one also comes down to Republican incompetence. We'll get to that. But this one could have been us. Like, it could have been for us. So Nevada, Arizona, these were winnable elections that for one reason or another did not go our way. And we'll get deeper into that.
In the
So what?
Senate, the odd thing about Nevada is the split ticket: Republican governor, Democrat senator.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the odd thing there.
Well, and then that happens, especially in purple areas. But um, yeah, we'll discuss it. So, what positive happened in the Senate? And I can say that we probably only have one success story. Like, obviously, you see all this red, um, and these are senators that we picked up. But I mean, overall, we lost a seat that we had previously.
Which was Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Um, I think your victory here is JD Vance versus Tim Ryan. All right.
Okay.
So of the candidates that really came out strong and had a cohesive message, that there were going to be new. The term I like to use is system disruptors.
Mhm.
Donald Trump was a system disruptor, and this is
Mhm.
the era where people are looking for these kinds of candidates now. Um, Blake Masters, not so much. I hadn't heard as much about Laxalt, but still, that's one that should have won.
Mhm.
But Blake Masters and JD Vance.
Okay.
Um, JD Vance is very much a system disruptor. He's trying to shake things up and make affect real change in the
Okay.
country, and he won his seat pretty handily,
Okay.
looks like. So I that is the one bright spot here. I think everything else was, of course, in Louisiana and Alabama, you're winning. Ron DeSantis has turned Florida bright red. So
Yes,
yeah, I mean, like, and we'll
Florida
get to
has been a
him in a minute.
toss-up my entire life. I mean,
Yeah,
it's been,
it's
but
what the
Marco Rubio, it
it's
wasn't even
what the
close.
2000 election came down to,
Yeah,
hanging chads
yeah,
in Florida. So yeah, there. I guess we can also talk about Mike Lee was. We were concerned for Mike Lee in Utah's seat,
yeah.
which
But it
should
was a
not be a
handy
thing.
victory.
It was.
Well, I
So
think I think that's going to go down to dirty tactics that we were talking about earlier. Evan McMullen has taken a playbook out of the Bernie Sanders. Well, I'm running as an independent. I'm just going in. He was running as a system disruptor, but he was a Democrat. He said he was going to caucus with Democrat. All of his plan. He was a Democrat. He has been a Democrat, and so he was just trying to fool Utah. Utah.
and yeah,
Uh,
Evan McMullen is a con man. Um, he deserves the loss.
Utahnians. Yeah.
But I don't remember how much money was spent on Mike Lee's campaign, but I'm sure it was probably more than we needed to spend.
Yeah.
So that'll be something that we can discuss. All right,
I
let's
know
get
he's
to
really close to Ted Cruz, and Ted Cruz probably threw a lot of his money that way.
sure, but I'm talking about the pack that
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell controls, that is for getting Republicans elected to the Senate.
Yeah.
All right,
The House.
House.
Look at that map. I mean, just do me a favor. Click on the Senate and then click on the House a couple times and look at the difference. I
Now,
can't help
part
but
of
notice
this
there's a
is
lot more blue on one than the other.
well, and part of this is you don't have the gray. Not every state has a Senate election every year or every 2 years. Every
And
every House representative is up for re-election every 2 years.
that's right. That's right.
So we're given a chance every 2 years to oust Benny Thompson, and we never can quite seem to get it done.
Yeah, so let's talk about the bad. We care about talking about Benny Thompson. No one else is listening to us might. I don't care. We're Mississippians, and we care about this. Look at how
I
large
think our
that
audience at
district
this
is.
point is probably mostly Mississippians. So
That's fantastic. Look at how large that district is. So we were talking about how this district was gerrymandered, and everybody talks about gerrymandering on both sides. I'm very pro gerrymandering. Like if you control so those lines are set by the states. The
look at this. All
people
right, so
in Jackson, Mississippi.
and when we say gerrymander, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. So you could like cut a state along geographic lines or county lines and things like that. I mean, and technically they are cut. But look at how they have like carved this little sliver of red
So those
out.
of you who don't know Mississippi geography, that's like half of Hinds County, which is the
Yeah.
capital for our state.
And
The
so what
county
they
that
do
our state
here,
capital resides.
right? What they do here, this is like Madison area. Madison is a very wealthy subdivision of Jackson, Madison Ridgeland. And what they do is they carve out all of the Republican neighborhoods so that their votes go to this other district who's going to go Republican anyway. And then they carve out all the Democrat neighborhoods and they make sure those votes go towards reelecting Benny Thompson. If they were to sort of just say, okay, we're just going to split it here down in the middle, well, then you have all these Republicans over here whose votes are now going to ousting Benny Thompson. And if that happens too much, they lose Benny Thompson. Both sides are guilty of this. If we could say the same in reverse. I don't even know which district this is and who is for. Benny Thompson is my representative, so he's the one I get most angry about.
Well, I get most angry about him because he headed the January 6th committee, that faux committee that went to investigate.
And that's just because he's been in the Congress forever.
Because he has the safest seat in the United States Congress. He does. So at the very top there, that's DeSoto County, which is very Republican. If you go look at the 2020 electoral map, it highly went for Donald Trump.
Yeah, they sort of carve that out and give it to the Republicans.
They carved that out. Mm-hmm.
They give all.
And
This is
so
the Delta. This is where we live. This is the Delta. That's a lot of Democrat votes. So that all goes to Benny Thompson. I don't know what's going on down here.
that's
I don't
Natchez.
know. Is that
That's
mostly Natchez? I
oh,
guess
well,
is
that's
right
yeah,
here.
that's Natchez, that's Woodville, that's all those areas down there. That's all
Is that a lot?
Democratic as
I
well.
guess I didn't realize that was a lot of Democrat.
Oh yeah, the whole Riverside is all Democratic. Yeah,
Gotcha. Okay. Well,
yeah.
that's how
And so
gerrymandering works. And what the way that happens is whenever you are in power, that party gets to
at the
redistrict,
state
is what
level,
they call.
yeah,
Yeah.
your state houses are the ones who do all your districting. They
Yeah.
do your districting for your federal elections. I'm wholly convinced that if we just put DeSoto County in Benny Thompson's district, he would be gone. That's how Republican DeSoto County is.
Yeah. So it makes you wonder why they're not doing that. But so that's Mississippi. Disappointing as always. Um, what else do we have as far as standouts in the House? The House is hard to really pin down any
New
standouts
York,
just
man.
because there were so many elections. We'll talk about New York, but like just because there are so many elections, there are literally 400
Hmm.
elections for the House every 2 years.
Hmm.
So it's hard to really pin down standouts, but New York is a conversation to be had. Um, but it wasn't the win that we needed.
No.
Like if we look at the totals here, you have 203 versus 212. There are no independent representatives in the House. And of the,
Yeah,
let's
we're
see,
still waiting on some results. We're still waiting on part of
you've got
California,
20 seats.
Colorado.
Yeah, you've got about 20 seats that are still open. And so we're waiting to see what happens there.
But there was a
But
lot of underperformance in the House. There was a lot of talk about, well, this is the most diverse Republican slate that we've had, Republican candidates that we've had, and that's going to really show the party's diversity. And they talked about all the three Latina women from South Texas and how they were going to turn Texas red, and it just didn't happen. It just did not materialize. We were supposed to pick up at minimum 25 seats in the House, at minimum.
right,
And we're going to pick
yep.
up 5, maybe
I think it was, what did it say? So we've gained 7 so far.
7.
We'd have to get nearly all of the remaining 20, and we're not going to get that.
No, that's not going to happen. And so it is a bad performance.
Yes. But what wasn't a bad performance was New York, as we can talk about it. Basically, the only thing about the gubernatorial race in New York is that the Republican governor did not win, but he did drive out votes, which resulted in Republicans picking up a lot of House seats. So when
Yeah,
people
picked up
go to
3
vote,
House seats in New York.
yes. Now, what people don't understand about New York is that really outside of New York City, it is very red. But New
Sure.
York City is the host for so many of New York's house like seats.
Sure.
So, but what happens whenever you have an election, especially like in a gubernatorial, like in an off year, people get out to vote for presidents, and then they will sometimes turn out for governors.
Yeah.
We did not have a gubernatorial race in Mississippi. Had we had one, there'd be an argument for Benny Thompson being gone, maybe, or getting very close.
Closer. I mean, he still won by 10
Closer.
points, 20 points.
So, but states that have gubernatorial races going on, like New York, they have higher voter turnout. And
Yeah.
because so many people were not happy with Catherine Hochul,
Hmm.
the replacement for, gosh, I've already forgotten his name, Cuomo.
Lee Zeldin.
And I'm
For
talking about the
Andrew
outgoing
Cuomo?
Andrew
No, Chris
Cuomo.
Cuomo? Yeah, Andrew Cuomo.
Andrew Cuomo. Chris Cuomo was at CNN. Andrew
Was.
Cuomo was ousted. Catherine Hochul, his lieutenant governor, took over, and this was her first election. She has now won.
Hmm.
So Lee Zeldin was her opponent, her Republican opponent, and He did a good job in getting the voters out. He
He
ended
only
up
lost that election by 5 points. 5
right,
points in New York City. I mean,
and I
sorry, in New
think
York State. That's a big deal.
yeah, and I think he spent a lot of time campaigning for the House candidates. So he spent a lot of effort, maybe sacrificing his own campaign,
Mhm.
so that the House candidates could win more, and they
Yeah,
did very well. So
yeah,
that was a pretty that was an unexpected pickup. I
yeah.
think that was one of the standouts as far as like um, what happened that we didn't expect. I mean, there's still Texas is still 25-13 Republican to Democrat.
Mhm,
Colorado looks like it's going to pick up another one of each.
mhm.
Look at this gerrymandering going on here.
Yeah, it's
Um,
nuts.
well, and it's due to population. I mean, I understand that a little
Mhm.
bit. There's nobody living out in that western Colorado area. Um, here's another one, and we'll talk about this more
Look
in the
at Dade
gubernatorial
County
era.
down there, bud.
Yeah. Um,
Dade County's red. Look at that. When's the last time that happened?
yeah. So this is the result of Ron DeSantis' gubernatorial campaign, and it's a the man is a beast. So we'll have plenty to say about that. Um, while we're on House, because this is most relevant here. It's not really about a national election, but one thing that did happen that is a positive, and we need to make mention of it, is the local elections. The critical race theory garbage being purported in your schools, being promoted in your schools, is having the desired backlash that we want to see.
Mhm.
And in the past year, I think there's a political action committee dedicated to fighting. It's the 1776 project.
Mhm.
I think they said they picked up over 100 school board seats between this year's and last year's election across the nation. So school
That's
boards are turning red. That is of so much import that nobody cares about that
yeah,
we could have a whole show about it.
yeah,
Because that will pay dividends later. Um, and if start paying attention, and I'm bad about this because I don't really care about local elections, but start paying more attention to them because they are getting more important, especially as things get worse at the federal level.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
and it makes most sense to mention it here. School boards did very well
yeah.
um, for us.
Well, let's go over and talk governor and state
Let's
elections
talk.
and why those matter.
Let's talk governors. All right. So Texas was not a surprise at all. Beto O'Rourke now has what do they call it? The trifecta of failures.
Yeah, he lost House, he
Senate.
lost Senate, he lost president, he's lost. No, sorry, he was a congressman. He was a congressman, and then he lost the
I think it
president.
was
Then he,
was he a state congressman? I don't know. But
yeah,
anyway,
he
Senate.
was. I know he represented at El Paso. I don't know if it was state. It doesn't matter. He's lost
Senate.
the presidential election. He's
Yeah,
lost the
president
Senate
and governor.
election. He's lost the governor's election. He's
Yeah.
lost everything you can lose in Texas. Like
Yes. So
he
and
can
that
go
was
back to New
always
Mexico and eat more dirt.
yeah that was a foregone conclusion. Governor Abbott was not going to go anywhere. Um, let's see. Didn't Stacey Abrams run for Georgia again? Yes, she
Oh
did.
yeah, wasn't close.
Yeah, I just
Nine,
that
10
woman
points.
is a train wreck. President of the Earth. What is
President
that?
of the
What she
Earth
was?
according to Star Trek. Yeah,
Yeah.
President of Earth according to Star Trek.
We talked about New York. Kathy Hochul versus Lee Zeldin, 47 to 53%.
Mhm.
So pretty handy victory for Kathy Hochul, which again, it's New York.
Well, and
Arizona.
we can talk about how Arizona's still not
Yeah.
still
So
not announced.
Arizona has not been announced. Um, and this was another one that we should be doing well in. Carrie Lake has, I mean, they're doing pretty good.
Mhm.
Um, this is okay. So if we go back to the Nevada thing, this is my concern. And we'll get deeper into it, but my concern is that we're just going to keep counting until it's a Democrat victory. It should not take this long.
It does. It's going to take
Elections don't take
weeks
this
at
long.
this point. No.
And people should be arrested for this. They should be fired for this. Of course, you're not doing your job.
It's like they hired a bunch of grandmas to count these votes by hand on a random mountaintop in Arizona. Like, this is ridiculous.
I mean, we're just going to look at it until it says Democrat. So that's a concern. And it looks like they're saying it's leaning blue. I don't know about that, but
let's say this. Let me ask this question, Jeff. Why is that a concern? Why do we care about the governor of Arizona?
This is a good question because we had this question from a friend of ours. Yeah, we had this question from a friend of ours. So first of all, if you're talking a Senate and House election, I have every right to care because that person's votes affect me as much as they affect the people in Arizona. Gubernatorial races matter for very much the same reason as we talked about in New York. Gubernatorial races drive out voters and result in down ballot victories and losses. Also, governors wield an enormous amount of power in the United States. Just look at Florida.
Just look at Florida, yeah.
I mean, Ron DeSantis is essentially the president of Florida. Thank the Lord. If I were to live in Florida, I would feel very secure in my rights as a citizen because I would know that I would believe that Ron DeSantis would step in if the federal government decides to step where they don't need to be stepping. I wish my own governor instilled me with that same
confidence. Yeah. Well, and I'll talk even a more practical level. Okay, so it has been called that the senator from Arizona starting in February will be Mark Kelly. He won right at 52% of the vote. I'm not wishing anything bad to happen to Mark Kelly, but if something bad happened to Mark Kelly and you had to appoint a senator to replace him, the governor does that. Katie Hobbs is going to appoint a Democrat. Kari Lake's going to appoint a Republican. So just from a practical level, they get to appoint a successor. So in the case of within the next 6 years, because that's how long senatorial terms are, in the case of the next 6 years, if something happened and it had to be replaced, that would completely change the power of balance in the Senate. And so by having a Republican governor in those places, you can affect national change.
Right. And from another just very practical standpoint, the governorships are where we most derive our pool of presidential candidates.
Yes.
I mean, most of our presidential candidates are either senators or governors with some standouts. So plenty of reasons to care. And you know what? It's because I'm an American. You don't get to tell me what not to care about. Screw off.
And I care about Florida because Ronnie D's doing a good job, and he is clearly the best person to. He's clearly the best person to run for president on the Republican side.
Let's go. Come on down. All right, almost 60%.
That's incredible.
Almost 60%.
20 points over Charlie Crist. Charlie Crist, who had name recognition in Florida.
Yeah, he's turned almost the entire state red, and it's because he has done such a phenomenal job. He did not win his last election.
Put it on his governance.
He did not win his last election nearly as handily. I think it was quite slim, actually.
Yeah.
But he went to town. Like, he went to work. He protected his people during COVID, meaning that he did not lock down his state. He has fought against corporations, which Republicans are petrified of doing, but Disney stepped where they didn't need to step, and he clocked them in the nose. He fights against Washington for his state. He works with Washington when he needs to for his state, like you saw with the hurricane. The man does the job and he does it well. So, and we'll get to Ben Shapiro, but like I do agree with Ben Shapiro about this. The thing Republicans have going for them, and really I think DeSantis has it going for them, and the rest just kind of do okay. But it is good governance.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
need to knock it out of the park.
And one of the reasons he won this so handily is his good governance made the state of Florida attractive, so that during COVID, during all those lockdowns, people flocked to Florida. They
Yeah.
absolutely wanted to go to Florida and be a part of what is going on there. I know we're not talking about Bill Lee in Tennessee, but the same thing's happened in Tennessee with Bill Lee. Look, I mean, it's all Tennessee's been a red state for a long time. More attention should be paid to Florida because it went from purple to red, and Tennessee's always been red. But the same thing can be said for Bill Lee. People flocked to those states during COVID because they had good governance policies and they protected the rights of their people. And that's what makes them great governors, and that's what makes them attractive, and that's why they picked up congressional House seats and added people this past electoral season because they've done a great job in those states.
So that and Tim Lee, to be just to reiterate a more recent point, Tim Lee also recently came out with an anti-trans, like he and his senators and House are working on an anti-trans, what do they call it, transitioning bill for minors.
Bill Lee.
Yeah,
Bill Lee, not Tim
Billy.
Lee.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Billy. They're working with Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire to get this put into place.
Mhm.
Like people, all right, and this is going to be the message when we talk about winning, like who to blame. People want you to be involved. They want you to do so. Like we complained about this doing something, this very vague idea that people want
Do
you to
something.
fight for their values.
Yeah.
This era of this libertarian belief of we just want our elected representatives to leave us alone. No, because there are evil forces out there and they are creeping their way into the city. We
Yeah.
want you to fight off the crap, like fight the
Yeah.
evil thing. And DeSantis is doing it. Billy is
Bill
doing
Lee's
it.
doing it.
Yeah, Glenn Youngkin, who we'll also mention later, he wasn't up for re-election, but he's doing it.
Mhm.
The people that
Greg
are
Abbott.
doing these things are winning, and the people that are the traditional Republicans,
Mhm.
they're not inspiring anyone.
Yeah, well, see, Greg Abbott's doing it for a different thing for his state. Maybe it's not the trans stuff because that's not as prominent in Texas, although it's go to Austin, right? But the border is a very Texas thing, and it's very easy for people to call you a racist because you want to protect your border, and he doesn't care. He's protecting his people, and that's what people want. They want you to fight for them. So let's go on to the next question. Obvious question is, what does all this mean? We've talked about the good, we've talked about the bad, we talked about House, we talked about governors, we talked about Senate. What does all this mean? Republicans underperformed. Democrats are in power and have been in power for 2 more years. They're going to continue to be in power in the Senate. Does that mean that people love Democratic governance, Jeff? Are they just so happy about what's going on with the Democrats?
No, I think if you look at the people that actually voted, they very much are not. And I think if you talk to the average person on the street who didn't go vote, who should have gone to vote,
Mm-hmm.
no, they're not happy with the direction of the country. Nobody is.
Then why didn't we
And
pick up the Senate?
because of bad Republican decisions, because of malicious Democrat practices, and because, well, this falls under the bad Republican decisions, but candidates who don't inspire.
Yeah. Exit
Um,
poll shows that Americans are still unhappy, and they voted for who they thought to be the most stable candidates were. Um, but they're not happy with the direction of the economy. They're not happy with the direction of the border. They are generally dissatisfied with how the economy is going. Yet they still voted for the safe choice rather than the volatile choice.
right.
And the volatile choice here, where I'm gonna go ahead and jump to the next segment, were Trump-backed Senate appointees. Those were the volatile choices. I mean, Trump went so far as like these people would have won if they leaned into the January 6th stuff more. If they would have leaned into the 2020 election more. They didn't come out enough on their Twitter and their advertisements saying that I won, that I'm actually supposed to be president. And
Okay, well,
they seemed very volatile to the American public because of that.
I see where your line of thinking is going, and I'm going to push back a little bit.
Sure.
Because I don't think it is so much that they went with the safe versus the volatile candidate. I think the candidates that perform the best or could have performed the best had they been given the proper support are the ones who are most outspoken about the issues that people actually care about. Trump cares a lot about 2020. Trump cares a lot
Hmm.
about January 6th. The average voter does not.
And his
Um,
and his candidates were the ones who won in the primaries, rather than all right. So let's do a postmortem here with Pennsylvania. First and foremost, voters of Pennsylvania, if any of you are listening to this podcast, please start a petition to be annexed by the country of Canada. You just elected someone who cannot speak, someone who cannot put together a full sentence, not because they have some kind of disorder, not because of anything that would be considered ableist, right? Which is what everybody's saying that Republicans are now, but because he had a stroke and the man cannot govern. The man cannot do his job. And you elected him to the Senate. Go. Please be a part of Canada. Please leave us. Please. Republicans, don't vote for a celebrity just because they're a celebrity. You had a perfectly fine candidate in the primaries and you chose Mehmet Oz. Mehmet
yep.
Oz had a much harder time winning that race because he was a celebrity. That was actually a negative to him. He couldn't connect with the people. If you would have elected a down the ballot Republican, right now Pennsylvania would be red.
He's also a Democrat. So, um, yeah, that we'll go ahead and we'll talk about Trump's fault. So so for those who are paying attention, we are in the who to blame section of the episode, and there are many people. Trump is probably chief among. And I wouldn't say he's the key factor, but he has done the most stupid stuff in the past week. In the
He
past
is
year,
not the
really.
kingmaker that everybody thought him to be. He is not a kingmaker.
Yeah,
His
I
handpicked
choose
candidates for
only.
Senate
Yeah,
all underperformed.
yeah, I choose only the best people is continually being made out evidence to be the hugest lie he's ever told. Like he sucks at picking people.
Yes.
But so Trump did a lot. We're talking about Pennsylvania. That was sort of like his earliest involvement in the election, where he endorsed Dr. Oz because he is a celebrity and because Trump
Yes.
likes to be popular with celebrities. The result of that was that all of the Trump sycophants at Fox News, chief among them Sean Hannity, went after Dr. Oz's opponent. I don't even remember her name. It's been a while, but she looked like an interesting candidate at the least. But
Was it Kathy Barnett? It was Kathy
that
Barnett.
sounds right. Yes. So at that resulted in Dr. Oz winning the primary because, of course, if you get endorsed by the former president and a chief Fox News host, you're going to win the primary for the Republican. And then he proceeded to lose to a man with brain damage. Now, I'm going to just come right out and say Pennsylvania's a hard win for a Republican. It is. It was purple for a while. It's really kind of blue now. Like it's just blue. It's that's a hard win for a Republican, but I don't think Dr. Oz was the pick. And you have a note on here about all of Trump's handpicked candidates lost. Laxalt, he did endorse Masters. I think Masters had other issues. It wasn't so much a problem with Trump. and now, but the key figure we have here is that Trump raised over $100 million in this election,
Yes, through his mailers. Yeah, he
and
has a very successful mailer campaign where he has a super PAC and he raised $100 million to support MAGA candidates in 2022.
he spent maybe he spent a little over 15 million of it.
You raise all this money, you put forward these candidates, you endorse them, and then you don't support them. That's a problem.
He spent
You're not going to win
yeah.
Arizona that way. You're not going to win Nevada that way. You're not going to win Pennsylvania that way. You're not going to win Georgia that way.
Yeah. Here, let me share this. So he spent some money on an ad to try and raise money for Blake Masters. This is so this is an email from, the typical, hey, please give me money email. Can President Trump and I count on you to vote? Please give. Da 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 da. This was the breakout of how much went to Trump and how much went to Blake Masters' candidacy.
That's not how you elect candidates. That's not how you help candidates.
99% went
work.
to the Trump campaign and went into the Trump war chest. 1% of it went to Blake Masters' actual campaign. So if you want to know how a common man does his business, there you go. Keep going. I have some other stuff to look up.
Yeah, so he is not the kingmaker that he made himself out to be. He is now setting himself up for. What's he going to do with the $85 million that he didn't use? He is setting himself up for a 2024 run. He's already attacked DeSantis. He's already attacked Youngkin. He's endorsed wishy-washy candidates. He has all this money saved up that he didn't use. He is one of the chief problems of why we underperformed in this past election. Another problem is Mitch McConnell and Senate leadership. Mitch McConnell has a huge fundraising wing. He raised over $200 million in this last election season, and he just didn't spend it in the right places for the right candidates. He would spend way too much money in the areas of places that were basically already won. That it was not a strong fight.
So yeah, the issue with McConnell is I'm really interested in and I wonder when the money was spent and where. So if you follow Jesse Kelly on Twitter, and Jesse Kelly is a news show, a conservative talk show host, but he once ran for office for the House in Arizona.
Okay.
And he had a story about how he was sort of the underdog. He beat out like the establishment candidate. Did pretty well, and the GOP held funding from him until like the last minute, but by then it was too late because
it was too late
of so
the
much.
Damage had been done.
Yeah, the issue we have with timing of where funding is concerned comes down to early voting.
Yes.
By the time if you wait to spend money on a candidate until like September or October, a lot of people have already voted. And while that is a huge problem and it needs to stop, there's nothing that the candidates themselves can do about it.
Yeah, Jesse Kelly cannot raise the money that Mitch McConnell can. He cannot raise the money that Republican super PACs designed for electing conservative candidates can do. And that's one of the problems with Mitch is the people that he gives money to are establishment conservatives. And Jesse Kelly's not an establishment conservative. And that's one of the problems we're having. And you have people stepping up who are trying to fill that void, but there's a disconnect in Republican leadership about who to help and when to help them. And that disconnect is killing them in the ability to get their message out there to affect the voters in their states. And you brought up the whole early voting. That's a big problem. There is a huge blame based on the Democrat election machine and the way that that works. There is no reason that we should be voting 2 months early for any elected office at all. So there
Right.
was some early voting that happened before COVID, but once COVID hit, it was an excuse for every Democrat controlled place to just expand early voting. Okay, for example, the Oz and Fetterman debate happened after they had already started voting. So people had cast their votes for John Fetterman, not knowing that he couldn't speak,
Right.
not knowing that he could not put together cogent thoughts. They had already cast their votes because that's the way early voting works. Early voting is utterly corrupt and needs to stop. Period.
I lost my tweet that I wanted. So I had a tweet that showed out how much everyone spent, and it was really making a point about how McConnell spent all of this money and Trump spent very little. But even looking at the McConnell spend, there is a serious question about, again, like I said, when it was spent and also where it was spent. Dr. Oz,
Where it was spent.
Blake Masters received $0 from the McConnell PAC. This is where I'm talking about. Blake Masters is not so much about the Trump endorsement. He received no support. And here it is.
And that was clearly a winnable race. He lost by 5 points. That's a winnable race.
Right. So, like the point, like I said, the point of this original tweet is talking about how Trump didn't do what he should have. Let me see if I this is hard to see, but you've got Mehmet Oz from the SLF. That's the Senate Leadership Fund. That's the Republican PAC.
Yeah, the McConnell Fund. Yeah.
Yes. Oz received 47 million. Herschel Walker in Georgia received 38 million. Laxalt received 25. All of these were Democrats overspent them in, by the way. Blake Masters received $0. That's Blake Masters right there.
I don't understand that. I do not understand that. I can't wrap my brain around that.
And I put out a tweet and said if he had spent half on Blake Masters, not even half, a quarter of on Blake Masters is what he spent on Oz, Blake Masters would be in the Senate potentially, because then he would have overspent his Democrat opponent. And Dr. Oz would still be where he is, not in the Senate. You spent that money for nothing. And you left a candidate who was like made people passionate, and he is running in a state where there's also a gubernatorial campaign going on that is competitive.
Yeah, and so Kerry Lake could have pulled him over the finish line with a little help.
Right. What are you doing? This should lose McConnell his seat. It's not going to, because he's a gangster, but it should. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about, like, Trump is making stupid decisions because he is thin-skinned and immature. McConnell makes decisions like this because he does not care for the direction of the party. He does this because he doesn't want those types in the Senate with him.
He only wants establishment,
and that should piss you off.
That is a stupid decision. There's no other word. That is stupid. So rather than have somebody who's non-establishment, somebody who's a lightning rod, as it were, we're just going to give control of the Senate to the Democrats.
And look at a comparable candidate. And now Ohio is more red, but look at a comparable candidate. J.D. Vance received $32 million. You spent $32 million in a state that is already heavily red.
Yeah, it's nonsense.
This is.
And that's not to say that Ohio wasn't an important race.
Yeah, I think you still need to spend the money
only won
by
7 points.
Get him in there.
Yeah,
right.
He won by 7 points, but still, that's just poor decisions. Poor decisions, and that's the best thing I can say about it. So I absolutely blame the early voting that's really exacerbated during COVID, um, and that's really bad in Pennsylvania, really bad in Pennsylvania, to a point where it went against their state constitution, and their super liberal state Supreme Court upheld all the decisions that they've made. It is super bad. I blame Republican leadership, McConnell. I blame Trump, who is Republican leadership, and I blame some of the pundits and the polls that are going on right now.
Yeah, I
I
talked
don't
I
like the
talked about
message that conservative
right.
pundits are giving.
I talked about Sean Hannity, fully endorsing Oz, and if anybody you listen to in public radio or talk shows or like that is not talking about this as the defeat it is, you need to stop listening
Yeah,
because
which
this was a
we have
defeat.
Shapiro in our notes, and Shapiro did talk about it as the defeat it was. I know that the Republican National Convention is going out and saying this is a win. Look at the governors that we got. Look at we're going to retake control of the House. No, it's not a win. It is not a win. We did not take the House by nearly as much as we should have. We didn't retake the Senate, which was a very high possibility. I put it at 65%. Other people had us taking the Senate by 52 to 54 seats. Okay, yeah, you want to read that for the people at home?
Yeah, my issue with Ben is this came out the night of the election before we started getting results in, and when it was assumed that we would win pretty handily. So Ben says that the mandate for Republicans will be to stop Biden's terrible agenda dead. It will not be to make very loud but tactically foolish moves. The American people keep saying the same thing over and over. We want some semblance of normalcy. Stop bothering us. Leave us alone. This is not a difficult thing to achieve.
All right. Did you listen to his podcast the next day?
I don't listen to his podcast anymore because I have a podcast of my own.
Well,
I don't listen to other people. I don't listen
day.
to other people's podcasts
Yes.
so that I don't steal their ideas.
Exactly. I cut down whenever we started one. I cut down on all my podcast listening.
And Steel manning his argument. I understand what he's talking about. He's saying, okay, don't make these stupid, like Lindsey Graham does this every now and then. He's like, well, let's just nuke Ukraine or whatever, or nuke Russia. Don't make these kinds of stupid decisions. I get that.
Yeah.
But
the point he seemed to be making. The point he seemed to be making is somebody who actually listened to the show. The point he seemed to be making was the candidates who were not good candidate choice, that candidate selection matters. They're the ones that lost. They're the ones that Trump handpicked because they were more likely to side with him on the election stolen in 2020 kind of stuff, and those were the most volatile people. And I have to agree with him on that point. However, I'm also with you on the fact that the American people want they want officials who will back them, people who were very heavy on fixing the border and why we need to fix the border, people who are very heavy on leave my children alone, people who are very heavy on the direction of the economy and things that are hurting them. That is what the message needs to be.
Right. And he seems to contradict himself the next day. I don't know if he reevaluated his rhetoric after the election kind of fizzled or what, but he says it wasn't a referendum on Democrats' excellence in government. It was a referendum on Republicans' lack of seriousness. Democrats will misread this and keep doubling down. So if Republicans get serious and drop the frivolous BS, 2024 could look very different if they can do that. Culture war isn't frivolous, by the way. It's key, but it's the icing on the cake of competent governance and earning trust with voters. See DeSantis and Youngkin. Icing on a bag of weird ain't going to win you elections. Okay. So I get what he's saying here.
Yeah, but like you said, he seems to contradict himself because the culture war things that are going on are a part of the good governance.
Right. Leave me alone is not the same as culture war. They are diametrically opposed. Yes. The libertarian leave me alone message is dead. Bury it. Dead. Get rid of it.
Stop it.
You have to engage in the culture war. That is what people are. If you had given Blake Masters some money, Blake Masters might have won. And he is one of those like people we're talking about with promoting at the weird message that, Trump's election was stolen from him. but he could have won. He didn't lose because he was doing the weird thing that Ben is talking about here. He lost because he had no support. I think that's pretty definitive. But he is a culture warrior. Like if you look at some of Masters' rhetoric, and that's what people need. That's what people want to vote for. The issue with Republicans this year was not weirdness. It was lack of message, lack of motive. Like vote for us because we're not Democrats is no longer acceptable. Like that's not a winning message anymore.
I wholly agree. I wholly agree. And the culture war is not opposed to good governance. Ron DeSantis is successful because he has good governance on things that matter to Floridians that include culture wars.
Right.
He is fighting against Disney and transing of the kids.
Exactly.
He's fighting against surgeries against minors, and he's doing that with his good governance. And he won by 20 points.
If what Ben said was true, then I would put to you, why is Ron DeSantis so much more popular than Greg Abbott? I think Greg Abbott's very popular, but is he Ron DeSantis? And Ron DeSantis is new on the scene. And it is because Ron DeSantis, because are you going to argue that Greg Abbott's not an effective governor? He's a great governor. He locked down during COVID. People hate that about him in Texas, if you pay attention. But he's a decent governor otherwise. We can name any number of competent governors. Ron DeSantis is popular because he went that extra step. And he says it's the icing on the cake. Well, nobody's paying attention if all you have is good governance.
Well, let's talk about DeSantis and Trump is and Trump's usually pretty good at branding. And
Trump is flaming out if you're paying attention.
The mark. He missed the mark. He's clearly going after DeSantis for anybody who doesn't know this at home. He's clearly going after Glenn Youngkin because he thinks that they're his chief opponents for the 2024 reelection bid. Trump has announced his candidacy for all intents and purposes. He has announced his candidacy. I wish he would have waited till after Georgia. We're going to lose Georgia again because of this. Oh, by the way, we lost Georgia the first time because Trump got involved. Don't forget. And we're about to lose it again because he's going to announce his candidacy and he's going to get involved in it. But he's coming out with not tweets because he can't tweet, but Truth Social post about Ron DeSanctimonious. That's poor branding.
Yeah, we can talk about the idiocy of Trump. Does not always come up with the best nicknames. Sometimes they stick regardless. But so Trump's issue here, and he started this before we started getting election results. He went in after DeSantis. Since then, he's also gone after Glenn Youngkin. The Youngkin and DeSantis campaigns are your two most successful gubernatorial campaigns of the past decade, at least.
We don't need this internecine warfare in the Republican Party.
I think
and if this loses one of our 10 viewers, whatever, Trump needs to stop. He needs to go home. He needs to be rich and stay at Mar-a-Lago and get out of politics. You're not going to get reelected, bro.
I think I am fine with Trump getting into the race. I think it's fine for people to fight it out. I think you need a strong primary in order to have a strong general.
Sure.
And I think we can see that. I think that he is making. I don't think this is a strategic error for it is a strategic error for other races, but I think this is a strategic error for him. I think this is hurting him more than he thinks it is. And
he's ticked me off. Like I had no problems with Trump a week ago. I really didn't. I'm sick of him now.
I think if you're paying attention to what he's doing, I think he's losing some of his core. Probably not all of it, because we have met our share of Trump fanatics. But I think he's losing the message with core Trump voters, and he's just setting his candidacy on fire before it gets started, I think. And now Trump has
When I had the good governance and the poor rhetoric, I could deal with the poor rhetoric. Like, okay, dude doesn't know when to shut up. But hey, I'm getting great judges. We're getting peace in the Middle East. We're having a secure border. Our economy is booming. There's a lot of great things happening while he's president. Now that he's not president, and I get none of the good governance and good policies, and all I get is his nonsense, I'm sick of it. Why would you attack two most successful Republican governors in the country? Why would you
because
do that?
because
It's
he thinks
stupid.
he thinks it's primary time, and it's not yet. It's not.
He,
We don't
he's
even
he,
know all the results for this election. It's not primary time
yeah,
yet.
he's such what's the word? Narcissist. He is such a narcissist.
He was always going to do this. I think it is, and I was accepting that of that. I was prepared for that. I think it is. I think his timing is the issue here, and I think it's a strategic error, and I think it's going to cost him.
Gosh, because he's made people like me mad.
Yeah,
I'm sick of it. Leave. Let a Ronnie D run. Let a Bill Lee run. Let a Glenn
right.
Youngkin run. Let a Ted Cruz run. Get out of the
I'm
way.
very I'm kind of intrigued. I'm very interested to see how this affects his support,
You
because
can
Trump
be
has.
intrigued. I'm ticked off.
That's fine. I don't like what he's doing, but I would be interested to see if this actually is a chink in his armor, because Trump has done stupid things so often and come out
Mhm.
better for it. But I don't think this is one of those times. I reference Jesse Kelly a lot. I've never listened to a minute of Jesse Kelly's show. I follow his Twitter because he is he says a lot of things that I feel like enough people don't say.
Okay.
And he is this person. I get this idea, like, let them fight, like let them get into the primary, rip each other to shreds, and let the strongest person come out, and he gets to be the candidate. He's been a big proponent of this, and he is worried about Trump's blunder here because he wanted to see the fight, and he thinks Trump's just going to lose steam before it gets to be that time. Ron
Yeah,
DeSantis does not have to do anything here. Ron DeSantis just won a huge election. Let Trump yell into the void. He's not on Twitter. Like, and well, I mean, not that anybody Republican wise cares about Twitter anyway, but just let him yell. I'm over here winning, dude. You've been sitting doing nothing for 2 years.
not
So
that you've been trying to be a kingmaker and electing Senate people and not giving them the support they need. So Trump came out a loser here. You know, he's been defending himself. Like I said, he's a narcissist. You know, 98.4% of the people that I endorsed won. Yeah, but the not all candidates are created equal. The
right.
1.6% that you messed up on, that was a big mistake. That selecting some random House member to endorse in the state of Mississippi is not the same as a senator from Arizona.
Right. Right. If I go to a dog race between a four-legged dog and a three-legged dog, and I bet on the four-legged dog, I don't get to brag about the fact that I picked the right dog when he wins. Like,
Yeah. So I mean, Trump. This is a bad moment for him, and this is a bad moment for the Republican Party. It, as always, Jeff. If they would just listen to us and do everything that we say, the world would be a better place.
I will go back to, I think too many people are allowed to vote. Um,
Yeah, I know you're
I
going
th-
to go
I
back to
think
that.
I'm going to actually come at it from a different angle. I think fewer people should be allowed to vote, and I think those few people that are allowed to vote should be forced to vote. But
Okay.
let's just see how authoritarian I can make it.
Let's
Um,
see how authoritarian you can go.
yeah.
Good
All
gracious.
right. Well, we are over time, and we had a lot to
Yeah.
say.
We had
It was
fun
a
though.
very yes. It was a very disappointing week. If you
Yeah.
want a path forward from here, like I said, pay more attention to your local elections. Get involved in school boards. That's kind of where the next big fight is going to be. And just tune out every now and then. Live your life. Um, it's these people all
Yeah, I
suck.
haven't been on social media for a week now, and I might just
So
make that like I might be a
right.
couple more weeks before I get back on. It was
So
good for me. Nah, I wasn't on because I was busy, but it was still good for me.
Right. But you should always listen to Always Right with Jeff and Steven. If you
Oh yeah,
did,
that's not social media. That's podcastery, and we're always right.
yeah,
The world would be a better place if they would just elect us as dictates of the universe.
yep. So if you did listen, we are very thankful. Do all that fun stuff, like, share, subscribe, and we will think about what to talk about next week. Hopefully it'll be a little bit more cheerful, but knowing us, probably not. Thank you so guys so much, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye, y'all.